I've taken the time to study the all 22 coaches film from the Buffalo Bills Week 15 win over the Detroit Lions. I'm sharing my top takeaways with you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. All 22 review time from the Bills' 48-42 win over the Detroit Lions, and I had fun watching that tape. Plenty to get into today. We'll do studs and duds. We'll do snap counts. We'll talk about the defense, but I want to start with the offense. And I'll tell you what, it's still Victory Monday. I'm recording this thing on Monday at 5:30 p.m. I still have my Happy Victory Monday to you t-shirt on that you can get one as well. Go to the link in today's show notes, and you will be able to see the Herd Mentality Shop. Go to herdmentalityshop.com. We've got this shirt. We've got a We Have JA17 and You Don't shirt. We've got an everydayer shirt. We got all kinds of merch available. So check it out, herdmentalityshop.com. There's a link in today's show notes. But let's get into this really, really good offensive game for the Buffalo Bills and get into some of the principles as to why it was so good. And, of course, the answer is Josh Allen. Josh Allen had his way with this Detroit Lions defense. He went deep, had 4 completions of at least 20 air yards. The play action game was cooking. Josh Allen, 10 of 11, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns with play action. That's a perfect passer rating, folks, 158.3. They beat the blitz. You knew that the Lions were going to blitz, a 35% blitz rate on the season. That's what they gave the Bills. Josh had answers, 10 of 15, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns. But the number that really stands out to me in researching this game and then, of course, watching the tape was Josh's average time to throw. For the season, he's been about 2.56 seconds average time to throw. For this game, 3.22 average time to throw. That's a big jump. I think the Bills, and in particular Josh Allen, came into this game with a lot of confidence in their pass protection. And he should have confidence in the pass protection. It's been unbelievable for the last several games. Josh Allen's gone 3 weeks in a row without getting sacked. Very confident. And I think that allowed Josh to execute in such a way that inspired and encouraged him to play off script a little bit. Now, Josh made plenty of great rhythm throws from the pocket, but he did some really creative special stuff outside the pocket and extending plays. And I think there was a level of confidence with how the pass pro matched up with the Lions defensive line and their pass rush, but also that they were going to play base defense and that you're going to have linebackers on the field and you're going to have athletes running away from linebackers and go make plays. And that's what Josh Allen did. I'll say it again. And I said it all last week. The Bills had to make Detroit pay for living in base defense and keeping 3 linebackers on the field, and that's exactly what the Bills did. This game was about tight ends, and it was about running backs. Certainly, Shakir made some plays. Coleman with the big one. Hollins had a catch. Cooper didn't have a catch. We'll get to that here in just a little bit, but this was the type of game to use your backs and tight ends, and that's exactly what the Buffalo Bills and Joe Brady did. Especially knowing that not only are they going to play base defense, they're going to play man coverage. The Lions play a lot of man coverage. close to 50% against the Bills. Okay, well, if you can't get home and you're going to play base defense and you're going to be in man coverage, we're going to hold the ball a little bit and let Josh Allen put the cape on and do fun stuff. And boy, oh boy, did he ever do that. I want to talk about the run scheme a little bit here. And this was a big shift for the run scheme in this game. If you've been listening to these all 22 reviews, you probably remember maybe a month and a half ago, I started to really go in on the Bills' zone rushing offense and how it has exploded and how good the blocking looks, and James Cook with the cutback zone. And I think the league kind of caught up to that. And they've been in a slump with their zone runs. In the first 9 games of the year, the Bills had a 57.5 success rate, 57.5% success rate on zone runs, and average 4.98 yards per carry. In the 4 games prior to the Bills against the Lions, the success rate on zone runs was only 47.5% and only 3.38 yards per attempt. Massive decline, right? 10% drop in success rate and a yard and a half, more than a yard and a half less per carry. The zone run stuff just wasn't really working over the last 4 games. So what do? How do you get out of a rut? You do something different, and the Bills went back to their gap run principles against Detroit. So no longer zone runs. Zone runs are, you're blocking an area, and the running back will press and find a crease and get downhill, one cut, get down the field. With gap runs, it's not so much, hey, we're going to block an area, but we're going to block a track. We're going to move bodies out of the way, create a rush lane, a defined rush lane, and go. And the Bills got back to that against Detroit. 21 gap runs against Detroit, only 8 zone runs. The gap runs, the Bills went 21 gap runs, 144 yards, 6.86 yards per carry, a success rate of 71.4%. That's dominant. That said, the zone runs still weren't working. 8 rushes, 26 yards, 3.25 yards per carry, and a success rate of 50%. So the zone slump is still happening, but they've reintroduced a lot of their gap principles. You saw pin and pull with Connor McGovern, where guard blocks down, center loops around and gets out in space and makes blocks. You saw every offensive lineman pull. Torrance, McGovern, Edwards, Dawkins, Brown, they all pulled. And Reggie Gilliam had a big role in this game. The Bills ran a lot of two-back stuff, a lot of heavy personnel. Reggie Gilliam was a big part of this gap run scheme, and that dude was mowing dudes over. Like, this is one of the best run-blocking games I've seen from Reggie Gilliam. Came in with an attitude. Moved bodies out of the way left and right. So they got back to gap. They got Gilliam going. They got pullers going. They put aside some of the zone stuff and really found their run game because it had been slumping over the last few weeks. And it felt like a back-to-basics week in a lot of ways for this Bills rushing offense that had nearly 200 yards against Detroit, and a Detroit team that's been pretty freaking good against the run. So those are some of the main points I wanted to make on the offense with Josh Allen and some of the keys there, the run scheme. On the other side of it, want to get into offensive snap counts. We'll start talking defense, Cole Bishop, Kyer Elam, all kinds of stuff, folks. Be sure to stick with me. Like being at the game, at the stadium, watching Josh Allen play, watching the Buffalo Bills. Well, if you want to get to the stadium, you got to get a ticket. The best way to get a ticket, Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to purchase tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. The app is awesome. It's easy to navigate. You can find flash deals. You can find a picture from your seat. When you buy a ticket, they send you the ticket right to your phone, so you don't have to dig through the app or the emails to find it. I mean, they've really perfected the ticket purchasing process. Plus, they specialize in last-minute tickets. So you don't have to make that choice today. If you can go, you can wait right up until the day of the event and get a great deal on tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time. What time is it? It's game time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. We got the early lines for Bills versus Patriots. The Bills are 14.5-point favorites against the Patriots on FanDuel, and the over-under for that game is set at 46.5. So if you like any of those props, go get in on the action. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, folks, let's talk offensive snap counts here. And by the way, if you want to see the film, I got it for you. Got to go to the Substack. I write articles. I do video content in addition to what you have here on the YouTube or the Locked On Bills podcast feed, where I'm writing articles and doing the All-22 review clips, where right now you can get 45 minutes worth of clips, me breaking down clips from this game, the biggest moments, talking about why, showing you the scheme stuff, and really, hopefully, increasing your understanding of what's going on with the Bills. So if you want to be part of that, there's a link in today's show notes to be part of the Herd Mentality Substack, where you get a bunch of extra content from me on a weekly basis. Offensive snap counts. The Bills had 70 snaps of offense. Josh Allen on the field for 100% of those. At running back, James Cook, 41%. Ty Johnson, 30%. Ray Davis, 26%. Reggie Gilliam, 17%. I'd like to reiterate something I've said a few times, but the way that Joe Brady is getting all three of these backs involved and maximizing their skill sets is really, really fun to watch. And obviously, Cook's still the bell cow runner, or the lead runner, but Ty Johnson on passing downs for pass protection and what he's giving this team in the passing game. And then Ray Davis is this physical presence that can also catch the football, right? Pretty exciting. I think people are forgetting in this game, James Cook had like 130-something yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Ty Johnson had 100 receiving yards, and Josh Allen goes off, and Ray Davis scores a touchdown, and it's just, boy, it's fun. At tight end, Dawson Knox, 73%. Dalton Kincaid in his first game back after missing the last several, 49%. And, man, they were close on a couple of other big plays down the field. Kincaid looked really good, and I think there's going to be some nice production down the stretch here from 17 to 86. Quentin Morris, 3%, and then Alec Anderson as the utility blocker, 19%. For the offensive line, Dawkins, Edwards, McGovern, Torrance, 100%. Spencer Brown, 93%. Ryan Vandemark, 7% in relief for Spencer Brown. Then a wide receiver, Keon Coleman, 63%. Khalil Shakir, 59%. Mac Hollins, 50%. Amari Cooper, 46%. And Curtis Samuel, 27%. Let me make this comment about Amari Cooper, because I'm quite honestly stunned that I'm getting so many questions about Amari Cooper. And, he's not targeted. He didn't have a catch in this game. And respectfully, who cares? Who cares? The Bills scored 48 points. They had 500-something yards of offense. That's how this offense goes. It's not about any one player that's not Josh Allen. There's going to be games where certain guys are more productive than others. This wasn't an Amari Cooper game. This was a backs and tight ends game. It's a Khalil Shakir game. It usually is a Khalil Shakir game. He's the go-to guy in this passing game. But I have very little concern, thought, or care, to be honest with you, that Amari Cooper didn't have a target or a catch in this game. Completely inconsequential. We know he can play. We've seen the chemistry. This wasn't a game where he had much of a role. and wasn't involved that much. And they scored 48 points and had 500-something yards. It's inconsequential. Let's talk a little defense here. And I want to start with the defensive line. I thought you saw really good performances here from several players. Obviously, Ed Oliver got all the flowers coming out of the game. 10 pressures, had a sack. You felt his presence, had the holding call against Frank Ragnow. That was a big play for the Bills. Ran over Frank Ragnow on a play that Greg Rousseau winds up getting a sack. I mean, he was awesome. So were other players. Greg Rousseau was awesome in this game as well. I know Oliver had 10 pressures. Well, Greg Rousseau had 9. And he also had a sack. And Rousseau actually dropped in coverage. The Bills did some creative things with some zone coverage drops, with some simulated pressures, and Rousseau was all over the place. I thought Von Miller played well. Really good rush game for him against a good tackle and Penei Sewell. I thought Austin Johnson played extremely well. Daquan Jones played extremely well. And there was a lot of different players that played well for that defensive line. It was good to see. Now, I think one of the big things that happened in this game, and I talked about this last week on Herd Mentality, where the big Ed Oliver conversation happened last week. And I talked about different ideas that I had for maybe why the production for Ed Oliver has been so drastically different this year versus last. And I went on a bit of a monologue, and I talked about a contributing factor being that the Bills just haven't stunted their defensive line as much this year. And I went through and I shared all the data, right? I think they're down like 6% with stunts, but then you look at the splits with and without stunts, and boy, the Bills are just drastically better when they stunt their defensive line. Well, guess what? Bobby Babich, obviously listener of the podcast, because he stunted this defensive line at a high clip against Detroit. 64 dropbacks. Pause. Yeah, that's right. 64 dropbacks. We'll get to that in just a minute. The Bills called a defensive line stunt on 22 of those 64 dropbacks, and of course, no stunt on 42 of those dropbacks. So it's a pretty good clip of stunts. And the results were what you'd expect. When the Bills stunted, pressure rate of 50% and a pass rush rate over expectation, or a pressure rate over expectation of 16.54%. And pressure rate over expectation factors in average time to throw for the quarterback. 16.54 is outstanding. A 50% pressure rate is outstanding. On the 42 dropbacks where they didn't stunt, pressure rate was 33%. So from 50% down to 33%. And the pressure rate over expectation, minus 1.64. That stunts help the defensive linemen. They just do. And certainly in a game like this where Detroit is one-dimensional on offense for, I don't know, it felt like 80% of the game. They really kind of went one-dimensional with their offense starting on their third drive because the Bills scored 2 touchdowns. They forced 2 punts. The Lions are in this one-dimensional offense. So, yeah, when you're leading by 2 scores, 3 scores for the majority of the game, it's a little easier to dial up these stunts. I totally get that. But the point being, I think that's a contributing factor and something that they have to be more mindful of down the stretch here to get the most out of these defensive linemen. Because the reality is they don't have Myles Garrett or Chris Jones or Max Crosby or one of those guys that comes in and just wrecks everything. So you got to help them. That's how you help them. Other principles of this defensive game plan, obviously 3 linebackers. You watched the game. You saw it. They worked them in, particularly early in the game. And then they had injuries, right? Milano got hurt. Dorian Williams got hurt, so they couldn't quite do it as much. But situationally did a nice job matching personnel. Bills don't typically match personnel. I think they did a nice job of incorporating that into this week's game plan, and I hope they do it more. They did the double cornerback blitz to get the Christian Benford sack. You know, it was the one thing about Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson's a great offensive coordinator, right? He really is. But some of his shot plays, they're pretty predictable when they come. And you could talk to Lions people, they'll tell you that. And I think Bobby Babich knew when that shot play was going to come. It was a condensed set on the second drive, play action. So when Goff looks at the defense, he sees one thing. And then at the snap, he turns his back to the defense to execute the play fake. Next thing you know is Kyrie Elam and Christian Benford are coming at him on a double cornerback blitz, and Christian Benford's a free runner. He makes the sack. It was a really good situational play call, kind of knowing that They like to run play action deep shots. And that picture was going to be really different for Goff pre and post snap with his back to the defense. Worked out. The Bills did a good job, I thought, in this game of rolling down the safety, bringing Cole Bishop into the box and playing him closer to the line of scrimmage. Now, Cole played in some deeper zones as well, and I thought he held his own, but I thought Cole Bishop's best moments were when he was rolling down and playing closer to the line of scrimmage, which is consistent with his tape at Utah. So I like schematically what the Bills had up their sleeves to kind of help their defense. I thought it worked out really well. Want to comment on Cole Bishop and Kyer Elam? I know there's certainly a lot of thoughts and questions about those guys when you consider both of them, right? Potential 2025 starters for this team. You know, Damar Hamlin, expiring contract. They drafted Cole Bishop in the second round. Kyer Elam, a first-round pick. Rasul Douglas, 30-year-old expiring corner. You feel like in 2025, both of these guys under contract are in position to be starters, and they got a chance to start in this game. And I thought both players held their own. Again, Cole Bishop, I thought the tackling was terrific. I thought his run defense was terrific. Playing forward, tackling, under control, some good open field tackles on Jahmyr Gibbs in space. The improvement of Cole Bishop from this game, going back to his start in Week 5 against Houston, night and day. And Kyer Elam continues to be solid every time he plays, in my opinion. I thought he was physical as a tackler, physical in run defense. There were some condensed sets where he's kind of out in space as an overhang, and that's not a very comfortable place for him. You see him go in zone coverage and get his eyes back to where they need to be. I thought Kyer played great. He gave up the one completion along the left sideline, which was clearly offensive pass interference, but they also missed a hold on Terrell Bernard. That was wound up giving like a 25-yard completion, but I thought Kyer held his own. When you look at the passing production that the Lions had, I'll get into it in just a second here. It's very empty to me, but a lot of it's, just in-breakers against linebackers, not necessarily going out there and cooking corners, right? It really wasn't that. So let's get into it, right? The Bills give up 42 points. They give up 400-something passing yards to Jared Goff. I'll tell you what, there's people that are really using this as a big detractor from the win. That production for Detroit passing the football is completely empty production to me. I remind you that the Bills were down 3 starters in the secondary. They lose Bishop during the game. Kareem Jackson has to play for the first time all season. He plays 32 snaps. Milano goes down. Dorian Williams goes down. You have 18 snaps of Balin Spector in his first game off of IR. And oh, by the way, Jared Goff drops back to pass 64 times. That's like nearly 2 games worth of dropbacks. So yeah, I'm unsurprised that they had some gaudy passing production, especially in a game where the Bills were up by 2 or 3 scores for most of it. They're up 17 in the fourth quarter before Detroit touches the ball. Are you really going to invest emotional energy in losing your mind that the Bills gave up some volume passing yards to the Lions? I can't even get myself to be super concerned with that given the context. Down 3 secondary starters to start the game. You lose Milano. You lose Williams. You lose Bishop. They have a double pass for a bunch of yards. They have a hook and lateral for a bunch of yards. They get 66 yards on a 3rd and forever throw that goes through Terrell Bernard's hands into Amon-Ra St. Brown for a catch and run. Nothing about the production in the passing game that the Bills gave up against Detroit signaled to me, whoa, that's going to be a problem. You got to stop the volume stats that people just get hung up on are just, it's silly to me. It's silly to me. The context there tells a story. All right, on the other side of it, we're talking defensive snap counts, studs and duds, and also Sean McDermott gave a bunch of injury updates. We'll talk about that. And the Bills game against the Patriots has moved to a new time slot. A lot to cover here in the last segment. Folks, be sure to stick with me. It's that time of year. The college football playoffs are back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoffs begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns and a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss A moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. All right, let's talk defensive snap counts, and I'll maybe make a few comments along the way here on things that stood out to me. 79 defensive snaps for the Bills. Greg Rousseau will do defensive end. Greg Rousseau, 71%. Epinesa, 66%. Welcome back, Dwayne Smoot, 37%. He's a good player. I love the way he plays. He's disciplined. He defends the run. He competes for his gap. He plays hard. He's got a little juice as a pass rusher. I like Dwayne Smoot. Von Miller, 34%. Thought he played well. Javon Solomon, 10%. Had some good situational pass rushes. And Javon hasn't played a ton, but there's been some moments as a pass rusher that he's made some impact. And I thought he got Penei Sewell on one nice outside rush in that game in particular. He should have had a sack and wasn't able to get Goff down. Defensive tackle, Ed Oliver, 65%. Daquan Jones, 53%. Jordan Phillips, 25%. I thought he was pretty firm against the run. Dwayne Carter, 22%. And folks, Dwayne Carter's not really playing well. I know he's made some splashy plays this season, and I'm not taking any away from that, but he's not playing well. He's not very firm against the run, and the thing that he was supposed to be able to do is rush the passer, and he's really not doing that. So I think he's got a ways to go. In fact, I'd start thinking about him being inactive, and I'd dress Quentin Jefferson over him. I'd dress Jordan Phillips over him, to be honest with you. Austin Johnson, 18%. At linebacker, Terrell Bernard, 100%. Matt Milano, 58%. Dorian Williams, 25%. Balin Spector, 23%. Joe Andreessen, 1%. He played one snap. At corner, Kyer Elam, Christian Benford, 100%. Taron Johnson, 89%. At safety, Cam Lewis, 100%. Cole Bishop, 59%. Kareem Jackson, 41%. Jamarcus Ingram, 4%. Studs and duds. I've got a robust list of studs. Here we go. Joe Brady. Josh Allen, obvious. Ty Johnson. James Cook. Connor McGovern. Spencer Brown. Deion Dawkins. Reggie Gilliam. Big shout out to Reggie Gilliam this week. Ed Oliver. Daquan Jones. Greg Rousseau. Cole Bishop. I think him stepping in a tough spot. One practice this week. Rookie, played horribly in week 5. Came in and held his own. Kyer Elam. Off the bench. Big spot for him. Plays well. And Christian Benford. Christian Benford's a stud. 2 major game-changing plays on defense. Had a sack, obviously, and that forced fumble over the middle of the field. Again, 48-42 game. Only turnover was that play. And he's awesome. Christian Benford might be the second best player on this team. Duds, I only have one, and I felt bad about this. I put down Balin Spector. But my goodness, when he was on the field, the defense really had a hard time. Really had a hard time. So, again, I think it's a tough spot for him, and I recognize that, but this guy's been around for like 4 years. You'd like to think he can come in and be a little better. If he's ready to go, he's ready to go. So those are studs and duds. Sean McDermott gave some updates. I'm recording this after his press conference on Monday afternoon. Josh Allen and Spencer Brown are all good. Allen got an X-ray on his right shoulder after the game. Said it was precautionary, felt a little funky, but every indication is that he's completely fine, and so is Spencer Brown. So no concerns with Spencer Brown or Josh Allen. Rasul Douglas, Taylor Rapp, Damar Hamlin, Matt Milano, and Casey Tuhill. Sean McDermott says they're all getting better, and we'll see how it goes. So we'll probably have to wait until the practice report on Wednesday to really get a feel for those players. For Curtis Samuel and Dorian Williams, they're day-to-day. And I think the Bills got to look at these linebackers. I mean, I don't think Matt Milano's been terrible, but boy, he hasn't been Matt Milano. I think they're better when he's on the field than Balin Spector, but Dorian Williams, I think, is a better player right now. And I think it's a tough situation where you're watching Matt Milano and you know what he's capable of, and you're really you're stuck with him contract-wise for a couple more seasons. You want to get the most out of that deal. But I think maybe you just give him these next 3 games to play as much as possible and see if he can figure it out. But I think you probably have to ask yourself some questions at some point as to, what's our best combination of players? and play those guys. And if Matt Milano can play himself into that, great. I hope it happens. But I don't know. He has his moments. Again, I think he's had some good moments against the pass. He's had some good moments against the run. But he's looking like a guy that went over 400 games in between, went over 400 days in between games and still finding his way. Hopefully he finds it quick. Curtis Samuel and Dorian Williams are day-to-day. Also, there's going to be a decision on Tylen Grable, who's on injured reserve. His window is going to expire here, so they're going to have to make a decision. I think they're going to activate him. The Bills only have 8 offensive linemen on the active roster. They normally like 9 or 10. And so I'm guessing that they activate Tylen Grable, and then some defensive lineman is released, maybe Quentin Jefferson, to make room, because the Bills are like crazy stacked right now with defensive linemen that are rostered. So I think they'll probably need to let one of them go and activate Tylen Grable to get that 9th offensive lineman on the roster. Real quick, the Bills game this week against the Patriots was scheduled for 1 p.m. on Sunday. The NFL flexed it to 4:25 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. So adjust accordingly. I don't know why they did that. It looks like maybe they just want to put Josh Allen in more of a showcase game for the world to see, because people like to watch Josh Allen. But for whatever reason, 4:25 Eastern time on Sunday, not 1 o'clock. So adjust accordingly. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Enjoy. That's what I'm going to say. I've had so much fun with this win. I stayed up late. I watched the highlights after doing the podcast. I was up to like 1, 2 in the morning or something, which is not normal for me. If I can go to bed at 8 o'clock, I go to bed at 8 o'clock. So pushing the envelope there is not normal. And then I got into the tape right away on Monday and had so much fun. I'm riding the high of this win for sure. I hope that you are too. All right, that's going to do it for us here on this episode. Next up, Herd Mentality. Then we'll start getting ready for the Patriots. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.